Hi, Dr. Mindy here. I'm a naturopath in Portland, Oregon, and I'm here to show you today about the tree of happiness, the mimosa tree, the silk tree, all the different names for Albizia gillibrissum. It's a wonderful Asian herb used in Chinese medicine. Um, the parts that are really great out of this plant are the bark and the flowers. The leaves can be edible, not that tasty, but they're edible. But you really want to avoid the seed pods as they contain some toxic alkaloids that can mess with vitamin B6. But back to the delicious medicine that this tree provides. These flowers and the tree bark of the tree of happiness here. Well, the name says it all. They really help when you're feeling down to try to lift your spirits. It's a great anti-depressant, good for conditions of nerves, especially like a broken heart is one thing they really say the tree of happiness is great for. And to help if the grieving process is going too long. Some grief is good. You want to grieve. But if it's just lingering and you can't get rid of it, then this might be a place you want to turn to. So it's also really great for pain management. It helps, in addition to other formulas, with pains from trauma or things that feel really stuck inside. So it can be great also. Basically, we're going to harvest a branch and we're going to take it back into the kitchen, turn it into medicine. And here it is, the branch that I have harvested. Just took some snippers, cut it off. And what we've got here is a little bit of happiness in tree form. It's called silk tree. If you look at these flowers, they're actually very silky and wonderful. An extremely delicious fragrance too. It's a very invasive plant, so consider that if you're going to plant it. You may need to spend some time taking care it doesn't get out of control. Look at how beautiful these are. Just looking at them gives me happiness. But basically what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to take off these flowers and then strip down the bark. Now this tree, we're growing in Oregon, you can see some of that bark isn't suitable. It's got other stuff attached to it. We don't need the crusties, so we're going to cut that part off. We're going to be using these parts up here that are not tainted. And normally if I was taking a much larger piece of bark, a very hard piece of bark, I would harvest specifically the young bark on the inner side of the surface. So if I was harvesting a larger branch of the tree of happiness, I would peel the bark and then just harvest the inner bark. But since this bark is so thin and young, I'm just going to go ahead and scrape the whole thing and take the flowers. Look at those beautiful flowers again. So beautiful. And there's the good stuff, the flowers, the wood. Even the leaf is edible, usually the young leaves. Sometimes I like to throw them in a tincture just for the flavonoids and chlorophyll, but this time I'm going to go traditional, just go bark and flower. So out of that branch, this is what I was able to come up with. A nice fine assortment of mimosa flowers and some good bark. I had to get rid of the rest of that limb as it was covered in lichen. But what I want to do now is make some medicine with this, and this is going to be great. Mimosa tree is great in combination, especially with other nervine herbs. Something like for depression, I would consider it in a formula, say with holy basil or skullcap or milky oats, possibly passion flower, lemon balm, maybe even St. John's wort if it's pretty bad. For anodyne pain relief, I might combine this with something like California poppy and kava, especially before bed. For heartbreak, maybe I'd combine this with linden blossoms and hawthorn blossoms. It should really gladden things up. Okay, so what I'm going to use today to get the bark off of these branches is just a potato peeler. Not that hard. Now, one thing to note is that since you're really trying to get to this inner bark and not the outer bark, the woody bark is really nothing we want, but it's so thin. See this green inner bark here? That's really what we want, so don't leave that on. Make sure you go all the way, full thickness. Get that off. So note that what you have left here is a nice pile of shaved mimosa tree bark and basically a magic wand. It's a lovely piece of very white, soft wood. You can decorate this up with crystals and sparkly glitter. Really have fun with it. And also some flowers. For the medicine, forget the wand. We're going for the bark and the flowers. Let's go ahead and put those in our jar. I'm making a tincture today. This tincture is just an 80 proof vodka tincture. And it's going to be comprised of both this bark and then top it off with these lovely flowers. And skip the leaves. Sometimes I use them, but mostly they're just considered more of a food, not so much a medicine. And here we are adding the vodka in, all the way to the top. And make sure there's nothing along the edge. And put the lid on so it gets a good seal. I'm going to put that away in a cool, dark place for several weeks, probably a couple months, and ideally shake it every day. And that's going to become your tincture. Then you can take that and squeeze it out either in some cheesecloth, easy way, or in a nice herb press if you got one. And that's your medicine. Be happy! So now that I've shown you how to make some wonderful medicine, I want to remind you that it's very important to go see a doctor or a naturopath or at least an herbalist before starting any herbals for your conditions. For one thing, you may not really understand what your diagnosis is. You may think it's just a little bit of this and that can be treated with some plants, when it's really something serious and you're missing it, and it could be fatal. Also, there are interactions between herbs and drugs, And there's also contraindications between some of the problems you may be having and the herbs you may think you need. So don't start taking anything willy-nilly unless you're sure what's going on. And to be sure, come see a naturopath like me. I'm in Portland, Oregon. I do house calls in the greater Portland area, and I also have an office in Milwaukee.